everyone, and welcome to the Videoverse. I am joined today by my esteemed colleague Zoe Liu, sorry, mispronouncing your name already, and David Lee. And we're joined here with CP. I'm really excited to have you here on the show, CP. Can you just quickly introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you are currently doing at Mola?
Yeah, sure, Nathan. It's actually a pleasure to be here on the program. So as mentioned, my name is CP. I'm actually the CTO of Mola, one of the homebrew OTT platform provider coming up from domestic Jakarta, Indonesia. Right. Over the past year, we have actually successfully beachhead into the rest of the Asia, like Singapore, Malaysia. At the same time, we are establishing our presence in UK as well as Italy.
Wow, so you guys are all spreading out through Europe as well then.
Yes.
Awesome. That's really cool. So before Mola, you came from HBO, and I want to talk
That's
about
correct.
that. But before that, let's go back even further. And can you tell us how you got started in the world of video codec and encoding? Kind of what was your first encounter with codec? How did you get into it?
Oh, that's a long, long time ago. So my first, I was really dropped in. I said they pushed me into the swimming pool, right? When I was
Nice.
actually asked to spearhead for South Asia, the so-called professional post-production world, because Apple at the time
Okay.
was introducing Final Cut Pro into the
Oh,
market. Yes, and we do not have
yes.
any expertise on the ground. I actually came from an engineering background, no video,
Okay.
no post production. So that's why I mean I really was pushed into the swimming pool and forced to
Yeah,
swim
no kidding.
without any lifebuoy. So it's actually that is the time where I started looking at first video per se, and codec actually comes up as a form. Supplementary from that angle, because as an engineer at heart, you don't just do the application and click here, click there. You really want to know what's happening. So I spent the
Yes.
time to really understand the different post codec that is, so and what makes the world works from production to distribution as well.
Okay. So what codecs would that have been in those early days for Final Cut? Was it ProRes at the time, or
Yes,
was that
so
before
we actually
ProRes?
started. We actually started with ProRes as the base for the post edit site.
Okay.
Of course, yeah. So we have the ProRes HD, we have the ProRes HQ, and then later on we
Yeah,
have the XQ and so forth. Yeah.
of course. So you got thrown in from the production side, but then distribution was a natural progression from there, I guess. If you edit your video, now I want to distribute it.
Correct. So from the production angle, we then have two kind of distribution. We have actually what we call the original media distribution, where we actually allows the video to be sent at high quality to other
Okay.
partners for further edit. And then we have the really streaming, not really streaming, in the distribution media mechanism, like MPEG Force, MPEG
Yeah.
tools that is meant
Yeah.
for really simple, lightweight delivery.
Okay. And so this is all, I don't want to say uncompressed because it's all been compressed from ProRes, but
Yeah,
uncompressed compared to like H.264 delivery over the web. Is that right?
definitely, yes.
Okay. Wow, that's really interesting. It's another world of codec and encoding is all of that production side
Yeah.
of things, which is a world I live in. I edit in Final Cut and I use ProRes all the time, but then I have to deliver and have to choose my delivery format. Talking about moving from HBO, your experience there, over to Mola, was there a big difference technology wise? Was the a different market, or was the market different? I should say. Now we're talking about the delivery of it from HBO versus a Southeast Asia focused audience. Was there a big difference between the two that you had to address?
I think in a certain way there is, but in general, the directions or rather the final destination is almost the same, right? In HBO,
Okay.
coming from the cable world, one of my key tasks was actually to look at the digital distribution as well. Yeah, and that includes
Okay.
HBO Go streaming platform for Asia. So from that
Yeah.
angle, the focus into the OTT world has become predominantly strong as well as focus for the organization.
Yeah.
In Mola, of course, starting from a digital native world, from the OTT platform initiative, right now we are also moving back into the linear cable world. So to me, it's a very interesting mix because it is like driving on the left-hand side or driving on the right-hand side and trying to balance both, right? I came from the left-hand drive environment, moving towards the right-hand drive. Now I'm in the right-hand drive environment, trying to rebuild the left-hand drive for this organization.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting analogy about this experience.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started out with those production formats, moved towards the distribution for OTT, and now they're asking you for the cable, everything's going digital as well. Is that right? Is that what's driving you?
Yes, correct. I think the key difference will be in this case, for the new world, even going back into a linear space, it is really digital driven as compared to before, where it's really a little bit more RF and satellite.
Okay. And if that's all digital, what codecs are they using?
Oh, actually, in terms of the codec, it is still something that is, I would say that there are many ways to do it. For distribution, in terms of streaming, we literally can be also using things like Widevine and HLS. There's one format that we use is also Zixi that allow us to actually deliver our final production, as in final stream, to affiliates. And there's also things like L2TP. Yeah. That's actually developed by some other organizations that gives us efficiency as well. I think for this angle, it is still evolving because predominantly in the past, for this huge base distribution, it has always been using the satellite for its actually multicast mechanism. But as we switch to IP, there is this, I would say, bottleneck in the IP world when it needs to come to a wide distribution point that the satellite can achieve much more efficiently. But I think the technology is picking up with more vendors coming into the space, learning the efficiency of how the satellite are using and then moving that into the IP world while maintaining the, I would say, the SLA as well as a response cycle for the distribution itself.
Very interesting. So at Mola then, I know that you actually did a lot of engineering work yourself on the platform. You're CTO, but you've been hands-on with the technology. Is that right?
It depends how you define hands-on. If you're
Fair
saying
enough.
that I go into coding, nah, I can't do that anymore. I can code to save my skin if I need to. But fortunately, I don't need to save it, right? So, but what I do is that my position actually as CTO in Mola is really to look at the various tech stack. And for me, tech stack, it is not a singular big monolithic design. It has to be modular. It has to be flexible. So from a technology standpoint, even back from the HBO days when we started to do HBO Go, we are always looking at specific component and how to maximize that particular module, for example. At the same time, integrate it with the rest of the modules for the whole tech stack to work. I think that is always the piece that is the most challenging, but it's also the most satisfying when you get to the end of the road. I would say that almost everywhere is challenging, right? Because if you look from a platform perspective, right from subscription, right from video delivery, even things like the CMS of the control plane, the player, the DRM, and so forth, every one of them has its own set of challenge. And the variable is so huge because there are so many ways to do that one single part. And it also impacts on the upstream as well as the downstream of things. So the challenge of a technology team is also always looking at all these pieces and ensuring that the handover from one module to the other is done at its best ability. At the same time, not causing any full dependency. The whole reason we go modular is so that we can actually change parts easily if there's a newer and more efficient way to do things. So if you design with different modules so tightly coupled, then we have a problem when times comes to change because when you change one module, you have to affect so many modules. For a tech team, it becomes very stressful. And we know when you are stressed, you don't produce good work. I think that's always the key.
You're right.
So
That's good
basically,
wisdom.
I think you really look for kind of independent modules that could be potentially relatively easy to be replaced. But on the other
I wouldn't
side,
say the word replace because it is not a very good word to use. I would
yeah,
say
yeah,
that
yeah.
I would say in terms I always look at technology that is or the parts is easy for us to evolve our tech stack. Because I think very importantly from a technology standpoint is that we always want to deliver better and better over time.
Hmm.
So whatever we look at, we must have the opportunity for that component to be optimized, okay, to be enhanced over time.
Yeah, to be upgraded, for example,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So then it's just because I think there's several goals you try to get, right? Because you want them to be upgraded. So relatively, you want each module to be relatively independent of each other, but you also look for the overall performance optimization so that they can work each other seamlessly as possible. And
Yes.
on the other side, you also previously when we met, you also mentioned you want also the whole system to be able to scalable. So there's several things coming together. They got to be conflict against each other. So how you handle that kind of things?
Yeah. That's the fun part of tech, right? If there's no conflict, we don't have things to do. I always say it's yeah, the technology side of things is always re-looking over and over again, and the job is never done. Today we can actually launch a new platform, running, fine, scalable, but tomorrow we always find that hey, there's small little part that we think we might have overlooked it, and then we re-optimize it again. And as when you look at all this optimization point, you'll find more and more. It is just like a string, a thread, no, from a shirt. The more you pull, the more you actually get from it as well. I think that's to me is always the most fun part of things. Is always re-looking. That's why one thing about the tech group that I run is that I always tell people, our work is never done. If we think that the work is done, that means we are not doing things correctly. Okay. Our work is milestone driven. We have completed one milestone, but it's always important for us to re-look at what we are doing to find out how we can even do it better.
So I was going to say, I love your optimistic outlook. That if there isn't challenges, we don't have any work to do. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a T-shirt right there.
Yeah, I just
Zoe, go
wonder
ahead. What was your
if
question?
you can give us some example, like once, for example, some modules you really want to optimize it, but then sometimes you may have to like this module to at least work with another module. Sometimes you have to compromise something, right?
Yeah, I think it's true. It's for example, if you look at just from the OTT perspective, from the subscription to the playback to the encryption or DRM, all these modules are literally independent in a specific way. Okay? Even the encoding and the transcoding. But if you look at the whole flow of chain, even from the upstream before he hits the platform to the media supply chain, there are always the intricacy of the connectivity, okay, and its dependency. Like codec, for example, coming from a codec as heavy, as big as ProRes, it doesn't make sense for that to get into our OTT platform directly and then do the encoding into the streaming format. So what we did was to introduce a distribution master format that allow us to actually have a smaller, lighter, and more efficient way to distribute this into the platform, while we host our original masters in the archive for any further edits, for any promo works that needs to be done, right? And that's how the whole handshake between the different modules needs to be looked at, not just with the module itself, but with the whole encompassing components that is supporting it, right? And this allows us to then streamline certain flows, right? On the other hand, look at just a player, for example. There are so many native players on the market. There are also commercial players. So the decisions whether to use a single commercial player, okay, or to use multiple native player is another tricky as well as challenging things to look at. It also depends on how the organization wants to go forward. So what Mola has been doing previously was to really branch out into native player because of its ease of control in individual component, right? But right now, we are doing re-fundamentals in the new platform, and for us to work more efficiently, I think the key will be efficiency. If we were to move with pure native player, we will find that every single team will need to have its own set of issues and resolutions.
Yeah.
So we decide to adopt a singular commercial player that we can work with so that we come back to a baseline. But if you look at having a baseline concept is not necessarily the best as well, because what it means is that you cannot fully utilize every single platform's uniqueness. Be it on iOS, Android, and Tizen, all these players will then becomes a baseline that you will spread across, and you cannot really enhance the user experience based on the platform that you're running. So this is always I would say the chicken and eggs part of it. And the dilemma between any technology decision that we made, it really depends on what is the end game. So for us, the end game is about user experience and stability. So coming to a fundamental allow us to build the stability and a consistent user experience to every one of our users. Yeah, I think that is one of the key challenge for any OTT platform provider like us. Number one, from the regional perspective, different countries has different capabilities as well as segment of users in terms of their endpoints experience, right? Just from the handset perspective, countries like Singapore, Malaysia, which are more developed, you'll find that they tend to have the bigger players. We have the handsets that's more powerful, that can deliver more experience. But countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, they come from an angle where you have slightly, for short of a better word, cheaper handsets that is not as powerful, right? I think this presents a very strong challenge to any player like us, because how can we keep the experience consistent to the users? And to be extremely frank, there is no way you can have a full consistent experience. It's about finding the best fit for that user in that country, right? For example, in a high bandwidth environment like Singapore, the experience will really be towards super high quality audio, video experience, as well as interaction to the users. But in a very mobile driven country like Indonesia, then it might be actually towards efficiency of delivering the stream so that they get to see what they are supposed to be seeing. A very interesting example that I always put is that because football used to be, or soccer used to be one of the key component within the Mola platform. If you look at any matches, a lot of people always just look at the players, okay, and maybe the ball itself, whether it gets into the net, right? But if you look at how codecs are being engineered and how it actually has been evolved, look at the glass field, right? In original days, with the quarter size VGA component, literally you don't see any patches, or rather you really see patches instead of the leaves of the grass. But today, with good quality codec, you can really see the grass field nicely, including the lines painted on the glass itself. I think those are the elements that, from a provider perspective, to me, it is important we can get to that state on the devices. But again, due to the limitation of the bandwidth in the in-country, as well as the handset, we might need to moderate that. So some users will get the super crisp, clear, quality of video. Some users will get a slightly not as clear, but you still, most important for football is you can see the ball. That's the most important, as well as the jersey number, so you know which player is actually kicking the ball. But it's also about the latency as well as the streaming quality. So you don't have a player suddenly appearing from the left of the field and it jumps to the right. You really can see the player running across, right? So the challenge in terms of delivery is always that how to maintain that kind of smoothness versus the kind of clarity. There is always a balance point that we need to compromise depending on the environment, depending on the handset of the users as well.
CP, can you share with us some of the latest technologies that you guys are exploring that are going to help you do this dance between clarity and smoothness and any of the other variables that you guys are using?
Sure. I think from technology angle, we are doing quite a lot of things. When we first started in the organization, the first thing was for us was to relook at the whole delivery environment or the delivery network, right?
Right.
There is no equal provider of the CDNs in the world. We have the big players, we have the boutique players, and we have homebrew players. I think everybody has a part to play in this world, depending on how we want to actually get this to the end user. And this is where, from the technology team in Mola, we are very focused on making sure that we have all the ways to deliver the stream to the end users at the best rate as well as the least latency. So we work with almost every one of the CDN providers that we know of to ensure that we have that road, to the users. Then the challenge comes is how do we determine which road to take, right? It's just like if like David, Zoe, we are world travelers. For us to travel from Singapore to San Francisco, I have 101 airlines to take. So which one is the most efficient for me, right? The same thing for CDN. We do have to have all those things as well. And this is even before looking at the business metrics. We're just talking about technology metrics.
Yeah.
And that's why things like selector, things like logic, as well as design comes into play to ensure that we have that road taken care of. Then the next one is the video itself. How is it the different rendition? Okay, because for different countries, as I mentioned, different countries, different handset, there are different kind of capability. So the renditions of the profiles that we actually send to the devices also plays an important part. Of course, a very basic profile is you just have that 6 different rendition and they're offered to every devices, right? It is a very base way to do things. It works, but it's just to not give you the best experience on the handset that your users might have. So that's from us to also move forward is how to discover as well as how to determine what of rendition to be sent to what devices. So these are the things that Mola has been working on to make sure that ultimately when the users gets into our platform from whichever endpoint, be it a mobile, be it a set-top box, be it on the web, our systems will try to deliver the stream to them using the kind of technology that their endpoints can best tap on. And then we look at the delivery road to them so that we actually has the delivery end-to-end being taken care of.
So is that, obviously first you're gathering data on all the different devices and the path so that you know which airlines are available, right?
Yeah.
Is that AI running in the background, making all of these decisions, I guess millions of decisions, I would imagine, or how is that third-party services? Is it your own AI?
Okay. This is the part that for me personally, I have never liked to use the word AI because it is being overused. All right.
Yeah, you're right. It means a lot of things.
It's correct. So if you look at the base of AI as artificial intelligence, it means that it makes logic decision based on data.
Yes.
That to me is AI. No matter how people are beautifying it, making it sexy, kind of things. But to me, AI, the base is that it's really given the correct data, what it needs to do, right?
Okay.
In that case, yes, that is what we are doing. We are collecting every single data that we can from our endpoints so that we know the road to the endpoint. And then based on that, we set up different logics so that we can then determine what to do for the particular endpoint, based on the country, based on the user's network. Yeah. And that over time gives us a better delivery to the end user.
So how do you collect this data from for example, from the receiver or end side, from the player side? So what kind of tools?
So today, when I joined Mola on board, that was one of the key challenges that I had because I don't have visibility on actually what is out on the market from our end user handset, and that's a big challenge. And without those information, that's really literally you are really firing the dark, right? So the first thing that I actually went to do was to work with. Should I mention company names here? This is the question.
You're comfortable.
It's okay, right? Yeah, for
You
me, it's
feel
uncomfortable.
comfortable?
Just that I need to know because I've been doing a lot of all these things. I just need to be curious. Certain things they don't like us to mention organization in that sense. Otherwise, in
Yeah,
certain
we
organization is that once you mention that name, they will go and find that company and says, "Hey, can you sponsor?" So I need to be very clear. So okay, so let me get. Yeah. So when I started joining Mola, one of the key challenge is actually about making sure that we know how is our users experiencing our stream. And that part it is critical to me from any technology angle as well as in the future. Any marketing recommendations, all those data are critical. So the first thing that I actually went to do was I went back to a well-known, dependable partner called Conviva that I have been very familiar with. So with the
Yep.
assistance of Conviva, we built up a path that I can then collect all the endpoint information from the stream perspective, right? And with this information, it helps me to make the correct decision of how my CDN needs to be retweet, how my players needs to be built, how is the codecs or the streams that I'm looking at, how efficient it is to reach my end users in the different part of the world, right? So it forms two things. One, as we move along, this technical data helps me to do real-time decision making using the system. As we start to see CDN's performance dropping, we can immediately switch, okay, the delivery path to a much more non-congested CDN, for example. At the same time, this data on collection allows the team to look at where is the bottleneck that we need to fix from a technology angle so that we can actually eliminate that right from source as well. So data like this are really critical to our operational as well as our roadmap planning. I think after we have implemented Conviva, the key thing that it actually helped us to re-emphasize as well as to reiterate the concept of the differences between the different countries, right? For example, if you look at Indonesia per se, majority of the streams are really mobile, which means that we're looking at anything maxing out maybe about 1 meg, okay? Whereas from these high quality streams that goes onto broadband, the number is significantly lower. Of course, that again depends on the time of the day, but I'm talking in general over 24 hours, right? The mobile space in the Indonesian market is so much bigger as in compared to the broadband side of things where you have the Android TVs and so forth. But over the year, we also see that changing. I think as a country mature, as a market mature, this statistics will start to change. So if you compare to, let's say, Singapore, you find that majority actually are on the large screen setup, where we then deliver higher bitrate streams, okay, as huge as 5 to 10 meg where it's needed, so that you actually fulfill a 60-inch TV running on the smart OS. So this is the kinds that also then help us to, or rather reminded us that not everyone is equal. If I deliver a stream that is suitable for handsets, you'll find that that stream does not do justice to the Android TV version running on the 65-inch TV set. But if I were trying to fully push the quality to the 65-inch TV set, I will face problem with the person running on a typical Android mobile on a 4G network, right? But I think over time, with technology like now with 5G coming in place, all these things starts to change again. You'll find that we can then deliver much more high quality stream to the same user, even with the same handset. I think there's always these three parts. One, the handset itself, which is what the users are holding, okay? And second is what we are actually delivering and capable to deliver of. But the most important is actually the road between these two, right? The network itself. And these are the times that in different environment, different countries, there are different stage of maturity. But everybody is due to catch up or leapfrog each other depending on which state they are in today. So when we do from a technology standpoint, the easy way is always do what is needed to satisfy today, right? The hard part is do what is required to make what is needed today, at the same time build enough flexibility for your systems to evolve. Yeah,
Yes.
and that's why for me it's important doing the second part and doing it correctly, doing it well, because that gives you much more stability as well as the longevity in the business.
So, CP, as we wrap things up here, kind of looking forward, we've talked a lot about you're always very thoughtfully developing and designing a tech stack. We'll use that as kind of the broad term to, like you just said, do what's needed, but also do what's required, but also thinking about the future. For, let's say, either for Mola or for OTT delivery in general, what does the future hold, do you think? What's next that you guys are looking at down the road when it comes to video delivery? Is it the codec? Is it the path? Is it all of the above? What's your thought? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I think from a technology standpoint, it's all of the above. But
Yes.
as any business goes, from OTT delivery standpoint, I always says that it is the end user experience that is the most important element, because there's always
course.
two ways to look at it. One is you look from the base, right? It's like you're building a Lego set. You get the base, you get the blocks, you start building it, and you start piecing them together. The other one is having a vision as well as a picture in place first. Whether you want to build a castle, a house, a horse, a car, you need to know what you want to do, and then you look for the pieces to start building towards that.
Okay.
Right. A lot of technologies always falls into the trap of the first. Why? Because we are always being pushed. I need this solved, I need this clear. Right. But I think a real technologist needs to look at, as I keep on mentioning, two things. One, we definitely need to solve today's problem, because if we do not solve today's problem, there's no tomorrow. But we need to look at the day after tomorrow, not tomorrow. We need to look at the day after tomorrow. So like what you mentioned there, from an OTT perspective, it is what would the end user wants, right? What would excite them coming on board to the platform, right? Today, if you look at the market, with all the players coming back into the global world, every OTT platforms come with a very similar base. If you think about it, the base is just deliver the video to the user so they can watch it and get them on your platform continuously, right? That is why the word is called content is king, because content is the one that is driving. But content can drive to a certain extent. Having the user engagement back into the platform, I think, is as critical. And that is where I think going forward, it is where the fight really begins. If we can find ways, okay, to have the users much more engaged with the content itself, that gives you the edge against the other platform per se.
Yeah, so then I have a follow-up question. Really want to ask you. So how to get, in your opinion, the final users to get fully engaged? Do you think, for example, somebody think you have to get a better quality? Quality means that the video should be more fluid, and even with a high resolution, talking about HDR, 4K, or basically we may have to have some certain kind of format to really get the customer or the end users engaged. For example, if we do some extremely low latency, right? Then the end user can really get some interaction with the distributor. And then this way they can also get more engaged. So what do you see? Which I know this could be many factors. So if you make a justification. So which factor, or top one, top two, top three factors will mostly influence the end user's engagement?
Yeah, I think what you the things that you have just listed has becomes a fundamental. It is no longer good to have. Right? When we first started in the OTT world, trying to get the lower latency, trying to get the higher video bit rate so that you get a better quality of video to the end users, getting HDR, Dolby, etc. Those are like add-ons. But to me, those are actually fundamentals that it should have. It's just like a differences between a Toyota, a Lexus, a BMW. They're all cars, right? 4 wheels, engine, and so forth. The fact that the wheels are fundamental, engine is fundamental, right? The navigation system is fundamental. Then what I feel is what is actually differentiating between them, right? From the platform, that's why I say about user engagement. How can users be more engaged with the platform? I think some organizations are already doing today, like making group watch, content recommendations, all this. Some are passive, some are active. But this is the evolution, I think, from the platform perspective, so that users becomes a part of the family. And to me, it is not just online. The integration between the online and the offline world will start to happen as well, right? Short of being, I would say, as in a trend following word, the multiverse. I'm still trying to get in touch with what exactly is a multiverse today, because different people, sorry, not multiverse, it's metaverse. Multiverse is Marvel's. Yeah, so talking about metaverse, right? I'm still trying to get in touch. Is a lot of definitions of metaverse is actually out there. So I think those are the environment where any organization, even people like us, start to need to understand how do all these new world, okay, can then be integrated and merge with what we have today. Even back to a very basic environment where, remember back in in the past, it's not really past, maybe a few years ago, we're talking about the death of cable, where the lean back experience of watching cable is dying, right? And the lean forward experience of Netflix, HBO, etc. is the new world. But if you look at what is happening today, it is changing again. There is actually a tight coupling between the lean back experience and the lean forward experience into one, right? So this is what I mean by evolution, as well as things that we need to actually keep on looking at, right? One of the key between what we're also doing is to really merge lean back, lean forward experience to the end user, so that we can satisfy from an end user perspective what is the best way for them to enjoy the platform. I think that's the key, is to enjoy the platform. There's a lot of ways to look at it. There is no one size fits all at this moment. And the challenge for the technology team is to really identify which tech, which experience tool can help us to do that, so that our users will feel that this is not just a viewport, but it is a part of their lifestyle that they will be looking at.
Yeah, we hear social media platforms maybe talk about more in the past, but you're exactly right. Content is winning out, but it's the engagement, and it's the different types of engagement around the content. So that's fascinating, very interesting. CP, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain, and for a lot of wisdom that came out today that you shared with us. I find it fascinating how you tied the technology, the end user, and everything in between all together. Every decision impacts the other one. So thank you again for sharing that. Thank you for being a guest on our podcast. And I hope we get to do this again and hear more about you and Mola and what you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for getting me on here as well.